everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with Spellbinders and another one of their new collections recently released. This one's called Susan's Spring Flora Dies and Stamp Sets. I remember the one that I had from her Autumn series, and it was absolutely beautiful. And this one, there is no difference. So a lot of the dies that are in this set are building flowers, and absolutely gorgeous flowers. So I encourage you to click on the link down below so that you can see all of the different flowers that are there. There's Lily of the Valley, there's a hydrangea, just all kinds of beautiful flowers. So here, I'm using the double peonies. Now, I wanted to create some background, so I'm creating my own papers. So I'm using my Distress inks, and I am using, and you know what, I had the piece of paper next to me. You think I'd still have it next to me, and of course I don't. But I believe I used ground espresso and some vintage photo for this background here. Then I'm also going to be using worn lipstick. Oh, here we go. I found it. Yay! Okay, so I was right with the ground espresso and vintage photo. And you can see I'm drying in between each letter, or layer, not letter. I love layering the splatters. And that's pretty much what we're doing when we're doing this ink smooshing technique. Now I'm keeping all of this in, so you're going to see everything there. To finish up that panel, because I have those multiple layers between the two shades of brown, I then came in with some black soot specks. For the greens, I am going to be using shabby shutters and peeled paint. Again, I want this light shade to go down first, and then I'm going to come in and just pick up those little tiny dots that are on my silicone mat. Again, those dots, as long as that first layer is dry, those dots that I'm pulling in from my mat are going to show. They're going to make an impression within that ink. For another shade, for the centers, I'm going to be using Wild Honey. And I think that's the only one. As a matter of fact, I think that's where I use actually. Yeah, I actually use my vintage photo with the Wild Honey. Yeah. The ground espresso was used with the black soot. Okay, see, this is what happens when you kind of know what you did, and then you just got to remember it, because you don't write everything down. Just saying. Eventually, here's the vintage photo. Eventually, you're going to see me use also the worn lipstick, abandoned coral, and aged mahogany. Now, from those three colors, I'm going to be able to make two different layers. So you can see that I'm just creating, basically, in a way, my own patterned paper for these, for my die cuts. Now, I'm pulling in the darker shade when it comes to each of these panels that we've already created, and just putting splatters there. It's going to give these backgrounds more texture, more dimension, so to speak. So now for the last panels, that's where we're going to create, these are the ones, so we've created the centers, which were the yellows. The browns were also for the centers. We've also created the greens for the leaves and the stems. And now we're going to create the petals for these. So we're starting with the lightest, and that is worn lipstick. Now remember, I'm not using oxides. I'm actually using the Distress inks. The reason why I chose the Distress inks is because with the water, they give a different effect. Your oxides are going to give you a chalky look. Okay, it's going to just give this chalky hue that goes across it. And 9 out of 10, I love that. But with the Distress inks, it's like you're splashing ink with water. And it just gives it this different look, or that different effect. And it makes it more, it's bolder. when it comes to that look. So you can see here I have the abandoned coral and also the worn lipstick together. Now for this one, I'm starting with the abandoned coral because I want this one to be just a little bit darker. And I'm just picking up those dots. So those splatters that are left on that sheet are going to get picked up. Now I'm using this last sheet just to pick up the last of the ink. Well, honestly, because I'm sure someone will say, all that ink you're wasting. I know, because I have a time constraint here. Sorry. Now I'm going to come in with aged mahogany. And I love this color in the Distress ink. It is so dark. It is so beautiful. It is this deep, vibrant burgundy. It's like a burgundy brown red. Yes, dare I say, it is a blood red. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So here now I'm just making a panel with the aged mahogany. Okay, so I'm just going to use that to create those layers. You can see that as I'm drying these with my heat gun, that water is just pulling back on that ink, so you can see all the marks. These are all the panels that we've made. You can see the 2 different colors, possibly 3 different effects. And now we're going to dye, to do all of our die cutting. The petals are going to come from the red panels. The centers are going to come from the yellow and the brown panels, and the green is going to be for the leaves. So I'm going to do all of this off camera because I just don't have the room to put this up on my table to show you all of the die cutting. So now that we're done, what's great is if you have the Spellbinders tool in one, there is an attachment for that where you can put a piece of paper there and roll it up. I do paper beads, so I'm using one of my bead rollers. That tool that's sitting there off to the right, that is by Tim Holtz, and it does have a slot for paper, but it's bent. I got to unbend it. That's why I'm not using that right now. So I'm just going to real quick use my paper roller so that I can roll these up easily. Now you can use a toothpick as well. Here I'm looking in my other tool-in-ones to see if I have that attachment, because I do have a lot of the attachments. And no, that's one I don't have. So very upsetting. So here I'm just focusing on the centers and making sure we're spreading out each of those points. So I'm going to have the brown sitting on the base, and then I'm going to do another one with the yellow on top, or I'll reverse that. I am going to make the edge that does sit along the flower just a little bit skinnier so that it's not so up above. I'm adding glue every so often as I'm rolling these so that they will stick together. And then just making sure I'm holding on to that to make sure that the glue is well adhered. Then I'm going to take the ends and just separate them out. You know, again, just fan them out just a little bit. Again, it adds some dimension and it adds some interest to the center of the flowers. You can see how these flowers are going to be laid out, and I'm going to be forming 3 of them. 2 large, and I'll end up with 1 small. I'm going to pull in my foam. I forgot what it was called. My foam mat, just to make sure that I want to break the fibers. So I'm going to use a metal ball. Now you could use the end of a pen, just as long as it's round and it's not going to cut into the paper. And I just want to bend those fibers so that the flowers will form a different shape. Now right now I'm going to the back side and then I'm going to turn them over and then just focus on the centers. Now, I did also use my Distress inks, and I used the darkest one to go around the edges, again, to add some dimension, to add some interest to each of these. Again, just by going around the outside, it just helps to make each of those petals stand out. I'm then going to place the center, and I'm using my art glitter glue for all of this because liquid adhesive, for me, is better. They will have a nice, strong bond when it comes to each of these layers. Now that they are all together, I'm pulling in my Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof, or non-bleed proof, however you want to say that. And I'm mixing a little bit of the vintage photo with it. So I have my panel here, and this panel that I'm working on, it's a piece of Bristol, is cut 4.5 by 6.5. And we're going to do, I guess, just a mini mixed media thing. So I've put water down onto this piece of Bristol vellum paper. And now I'm coming in with my Ranger brush. And that's about, I think it's 3/4 of an inch or maybe a 1/2 inch wide. So I'm just streaking that paint up and down. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of the white. And then I'm going to let that dry. Again, it's going to create its own background. Now, you can use an embossing folder, you can use, I mean, again, whatever you want, but I do like mixing mixed media onto my cards. I'm finding a lot of joy in that. So I wanted to throw that in here as well. So I added some white splatters, that'll just sit in the background, and I'm going to make sure that this panel is heat dried before we go on. And that's what that panel looks like. So we've got a lot of different colors. And again, just adding a little bit of vintage photo to some white watercolor, and then white watercolor straight on top. I'm now going to take this panel in my Versamark ink, and I'm going to go around the outside of this, and I'm going to add some silver embossing powder around this. Yes, silver. And it is the Antique Silver by Altenew. Now, again, gold would be fine with this by all means, but you're going to see me pull gold in another area. So once I have all of that heat set, I've now got this silver edge going around this paper. I'm going to stamp the sentiment, "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." And that's a quote by Audrey Hepburn. I love her quotes. She's got so many good ones out there. But I'm now going to take this panel, and I'm going to put it on top of a piece of gold mirror cardstock by Tonic. And you can see I cut the center out, just so I can be frugal with my mirror cardstock. Hee hee. So I've got this silver and gold going on here, and that's okay. The silver is going to emphasize the white accents that are in the background, and then that gold is going to accent and pull out that sentiment. I'm now going to play around with the placement of my flowers and the greenery. Now, I am going to use my glue dots, so I'm searching for those. I do like using glue dots for something like this. I think you get a better adhesion when it comes to all of these layers. Now, you could use, you could use your liquid adhesive. That would be just as fine. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm using, for some of them I'm going to use multiple just to make sure that the area is covered, because these large ones, it's a large area that needs to make sure that is stuck to our panel. Now, you could also put foam squares behind those base petals, because then that would keep them raised and curved if you wanted to. I mean, that's absolutely your choice. So now I'm just having fun layering in the leaves, making them intertwined throughout the petals, see what that will give. But for the most part, I am putting them to the underside of each of the flowers. Once I know that they are set, I will come in and then use my liquid adhesive to have them stuck down to the base of, or underneath those flowers. Sorry about that. I lost my train of thought, you know? And again, just using my liquid glue. Now, what I want to make sure, though, is as I'm sticking those down, I'm not losing the dimension that I had on my petals before. So I want to make sure that, you know, if that first layer is sticking down, that's fine. But I do want to make sure that I'm not losing too much of the dimension. There are some leaves that are grouped together that I'm actually wrapping around the petals, like I said before. So you can have one on top and then one on the bottom. So that's what's great with this. Now you could also pull all of these apart like I did with a few of these, just to fill them in. Yes, I am shaking the card because as you can see, that one came out. So yes, I shake the card to see if anything's going to go flying. And 9 out of 10, something does go flying through the air. With the greatest of ease, you know, I am going to trim around the card just to make that even. And this was put on a 5x7 card base. This is a wonderful size card, and this is one that I would definitely hand off to my recipient. I'm pulling in my satin chocolate Nouveau drops just to add a level and embellishment to this card. And again, it's going to pull out the center of the peonies with the brown that I used for there as well. This may look violent, but I am gently tapping that card just to level out those enamel dots. So I do hope you enjoyed this project. And again, if you're curious to see the entire collection, it will be linked down below in the video description, along with the links to their shop, their gallery for more inspiration and anything else that you might be looking for. By all means, if you have any questions, make sure you leave those down below, and I'll make sure I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Continue to enjoy. Smile. Remember, enjoy this process. Have fun with it. But most of all, always be creative. Till next time, guys.